Today we are going to be talking about using Queen Anne's lace for fertility management. Okay, perfect. All right. So I have been using this medicine in conjunction with cycle tracking to manage my fertility for years. It has worked very well for me. So I thought it would be nice to be able to share some of this knowledge with you all today. And where our last free mini workshop was on cycle tracking, I thought this would be a nice little bonus class. So I do want to say that I am not an expert in herbalism. I am not an herbalist. But I have such a fondness for this medicine. Like I've said, I've been working with this medicine for years, and I really do enjoy herbal medicine. Typically, like I said, not an herbalist, but I do use herbs quite frequently for my own healing and for the healing of my family. So, yes, I feel that this can help empower women by having a reliable method of fertility management or birth control without the harmful hormonal disruption and awful side effects of medical birth control. So, unfortunately, a lot of women don't have access to this sort of information. I've told when sharing with women about cycle tracking and different herbal medicines, a lot of the times they are quite shocked that these things are even an option for them. So yes, that is a big reason why I wanted to share this information with you all today. So let's get into it. So much of this information that I will be sharing comes from my own experience growing, harvesting, processing, and using Queen Anne's lace. I believe that it is best to use this medicine in conjunction with cycle tracking or fertility awareness method. I became proficient in cycle tracking before introducing this herbal component. So, in my opinion, and of course, this is just my opinion, I do think that it is important to be pretty familiar with your cycle and with your body before using this medicine, before using this herb. So I have a resource on cycle tracking basics. There is a recording of that live class, and I have a whole free resource on my website that includes that recording, and then there's a bunch of notes on that as well, and some additional resources too for you. So definitely go check that out. All right, so Queen Anne's Lace. Queen Anne's Lace. So, I also want to share that some of this information that I am sharing in here comes from Molly Dutton Kenny. She is a midwife and she has a fabulous e-course on using Queen Anne's lace for fertility management. So if you want to dive deeper into this medicine and into these topics, I would highly recommend purchasing her course. It is a very comprehensive guide and it is only $30. So I'm going to be going over a pretty basic overview. You will know how to use Queen Anne's Lace for fertility management after this class. But again, like I said, if you want to dive deeper into that, which I would recommend if you're going to use this as your sole method as pregnancy prevention, um, I would highly recommend also taking the $30 course. So Queen Anne's lace is a delicate wildflower that goes by many names with many many different names. So Daucus carota is the Latin name. It also goes by wild carrot, black carrot, bishop's lace, cow's lace, or bird's nest. So it is a member of the parsley family and it is related to edible carrots. It smells strongly of carrots also. It is considered to be an invasive weed, so it is a wildflower. So the good part about it being invasive is that it is very easy to source. So Queen Anne's lace is native to Europe and Central Asia, and it has been naturalized to North America, South Africa, and Australia. It prefers disturbed soil, so that would be near paths, train tracks, in urban areas, by highways. It prefers full sun, no shade, and it is rarely cultivated. Usually, you are going to find it growing wild, but you could spread some seeds in your yard, and then you would have your own patch of Queen Anne's lace. Okay. And this is just some photos of how they usually are. They kind of grow in little patches. Usually you can find it on the side of the road while you're driving. I know when I'm driving, I'm always looking for what kind of things I can forage. So the flowers are white, tiny individual flowers that grow in clumps, forming a lacy, flat cluster, usually measuring about 1 to 4 inches across. They have a web of spindly floret stems that join on the underside of the flower in a single point. And some Queen Anne's lace flowers will have a single red or purple flower in the exact center of the cluster. I don't think I have ever seen this actually, Queen Anne's lace with the red dot in the center. Usually the Queen Anne's lace that I work with is all white. All right, so Queen Anne's lace has very thin leaves, small stems from the flower clumps, and they all join at a central point underneath the flower, making one jointed nest. The leaves are 2 to 8 inches. They are flat and they offshoot from the center. They are thin and spindly, except at the base, where they are rather thick, and often they do have some hairs on the other underside of them, but they are usually smooth on the top. Now we'll talk about the seeds. So these are the Queen Anne's lace seeds. They are green when they are fresh, and they will turn brown or even a grayish color when they are dried. They are oval in shape. They are ridged or textured, and they are also have like a hairy or spiky look to them that is very similar to their stems. So if you see on the left, those are fresh seeds, and on the right is dried seeds. So these are the stems of Queen Anne's lace. So Queen Anne's lace is typically 2 to 4 feet in height, and they will smell faintly of carrot or fresh greens. So there are a lot of Queen Anne's lace lookalikes. So if you are planning on foraging these flowers, it is very, very important to identify them correctly because some of them are poisonous. But it can be very easy to identify Queen Anne's lace accurately by using the little saying, the queen has hairy legs. So you see how the stems look hairy or they have little furs on them. Sometimes, so it's very obvious in these pictures. I have seen Queen Anne's lace where they're textured, but the furs aren't as long. So it's not always very, very obvious, but they will always have some sort of fur or hair on them. Um, no Queen Anne's lace lookalikes will have fur on the stems. So that's why when I am identifying a new patch of Queen Anne's lace, I use all of the identifying factors, but this is always the telltale sign for me. Poison hemlock. So actually, I'm going to switch to the next slide here. So here is a little comparison chart for the different lookalikes. There are many lookalikes. So some of these I actually don't look that similar, but to the untrained eye, I could see how you see, white clumps of flowers and would think that maybe it is the same plant. But once you're used to working with them and identifying them, it's usually quite simple to be able to tell them apart. But so we have giant hogweed, cow parsnip, and poison hemlock. Those are three different lookalikes to Queen Anne's lace. If you're planning on working with this medicine, I would highly recommend taking a little screenshot of this page and saving this for your own information to look back on. So, yes. And this is the difference of the stems. So that middle one is going to be poison hemlock, and the one all the way to the right is Queen Anne's lace. So definitely be careful when harvesting on the side of the road or in the woods. You don't want to accidentally consume flowers that have been sprayed with pesticides. So that's another important note. Be conscious of where you are getting whenever you're foraging, be conscious of where you're foraging because oftentimes on the side of the roads or highways or I mean, I wouldn't recommend taking something from someone's yard, but a lot of people will use different pesticides on their lawns and it can make you quite sick. So when I'm harvesting, I prefer to use use patches that I'm familiar with. So either from a friend's yard where I know they're not using pesticides, and I actually have a plan next year to start my own little patch of wildflowers and different herbs and medicines. So, yes, you can consume Queen Anne's lace as dried seeds, which is my favorite method. You can consume it as a tea or as a tincture. All of these methods of consumption will work for pregnancy prevention. I'm not going to go too deep into the mechanics or the physiology of how Queen Anne's lace works. But what I will say is it kind of acts as it makes the walls of the uterus, the uterine lining, slippery, and it prevents implantation. So that is how Queen Anne's lace works. If you would like to know more about the mechanisms of how Queen Anne's lace works in the body to prevent pregnancy, again, I would highly recommend checking out Molly Dutton Kenny's course. I will also link that. It's linked on the page on my free resource on my website, but I'll also put it in the Facebook event if you are listening to this live. Okay. Queen Anne's lace, in whatever manner you choose to work with it, should be used surrounding any potentially fertilizing event. So, Molly Dutton Kenny actually recommends that you take this every time you have sex. I would, yeah. So if you're not really familiar with your cycle, you could definitely do that. Or if it would be catastrophic for you to get pregnant right now, yes, definitely use this after every time you're having sex. But, well, of course, if you're, using a condom or something like that, you wouldn't have to, but potentially fertilizing sex, right? So sex with ejaculation. Um, I am very confident tracking my cycle. I'm usually very sure of when I'm ovulating. So I only use this when I'm having sex around my fertile period. So I do not use this every single time I have sex, but some people recommend that you do. So it is really up to you whether you want to do that or not. It doesn't appear that there are really any side effects to it or any downsides to taking it every time. It just, I just don't find it to be necessary personally. So, I previously, when I was taking this medicine, I used to just take about 1 to 2 teaspoons of it. I would take the dried seeds. The first time when I first started using this, I purchased some organic seeds on Amazon, and I just had a little pouch of Queen Anne's lace seeds, and I would just take, a tablespoon or two of it pretty much, within like 12 to 24 hours after I was having sex. And I would chew them, I would grind them with my teeth very fine. It's going to taste very floral. It has a very strong taste, and it's supposed to taste like that. So I know the first time I tasted it, it doesn't taste right, you know what I mean? But it is a medicine, and medicines can tend to either have strong or earthy flavors, especially herbal medicine, right? So that's how I used to take it. It always worked for me, but Bolly Dutton Kenny recommends taking it in 3 doses. So I actually started doing the 3 dose method. I don't know if I'm always going to do that, but I have started doing that recently. So this is what the 3 dose method would look like. Your first dose, you are going to take that 8 to 12 hours after having sex. And then your second dose is going to be about 8 hours, 8 to 12 hours after that first dose. And then again, the third dose is going to be 8 to 12 hours after that second dose. And then you stop, no more. So, by her theory, it is very important. The process of taking those 3 doses and then stopping is very important. She says that stopping the medicine is just as important as taking it in pregnancy prevention. Um, so these doses should be spaced over a minimum of 24 hours and an absolute maximum of 72 hours. These doses should be based on when you had the unprotected sex, and this should never be taken daily. And doses can be, sorry, I got lost in my notes. Yes, so when you're taking this, you want there to be consistency in how you're taking it. So if you're taking a tincture, you want to take all 3 doses as a tincture. You don't want to first take dried seeds and then drink a tea and then have a tincture. So it is important, by her theory, to use the same method of consumption. So I will go into how to take this medicine as dried seeds and as dried flowers as a tea. I have never made the tincture before, so I will not be sharing that information here. But if you really wanted to make a tincture, I'm sure you could find that information somewhere on the internet, and it is shared in that course that I have referenced. So, dried seeds, you can take it about a teaspoon, chewed well, and swallowed with juice or water on an empty stomach. This is the oldest historical method of consumption of Queen Anne's lace specifically for implantation inhibition. So that is one method of taking dried seeds. You could also, again, take about a teaspoon, ground by mortar and pestle, or in a clean coffee grinder, and then mixed into a small amount of juice or water. Again, taken on an empty stomach. Or you could take a teaspoon of seeds, again, grind them, pour them into a cup, and pour about 8 ounces of boiling water into the cup. Let it steep for 15 minutes and consume as a warm beverage on an empty stomach. My favorite method is the first method of just taking a teaspoon of dried seeds and grind them very well between my teeth. There is a philosophy that one theory is that part of the medicine is the full experience. So the floral taste in your mouth, the feeling of grinding the seeds between your teeth, swallowing it, and also the smelling the aroma of the seeds. So there is a theory that all of that is important, and I think a very important aspect to this is it's very personal, right? So what is going to work for one person doesn't always work for another person. So when using any sort of herbal medicine, it is very important to use what method works best for you. So that works best for me. That's how I always have done it. And someone else when I was learning more about this, there was another woman that kind of confirmed my method of use, saying it was the best method. So that's the best method for me, might not be the best method for you. Now, if you were to use dried flowers, and I'll also say when I'm drying seeds or flowers out, I pick them fresh and then I either put them in my dehydrator, but usually with something like this, I will just leave them on a cutting board in my kitchen until they are dry, so maybe for a week. And then I will harvest the seeds by very gently rubbing the seeds out of the little bird's nest that it created. And I wish I know I didn't include a photo of the bird's nest. I apologize. But when these flowers dry up, they kind of curl up around themselves. The flowers and the petals themselves go away, and it is just the stems on the underneath that curl up around itself. And there is a little bundle of seeds. It'll be very obvious. It does not look like these flowers. It looks almost dead, but you will notice that there is a little nest of seeds in there. So that is how, those are the flowers you want to harvest the seeds. Dry the seeds out so you can leave them on the counter for about a week or put them in the dehydrator, and then you can just gently rub your fingers on those seeds and they will fall right out. And I store them in a glass jar. So for the method of using dried flowers, you would place 2 to 3 dried flower heads into a teacup and then pour 8 ounces of boiling water over the flowers. Let it steep for 15 minutes and consume on an empty stomach. So, yes, that is what I have to share about Queen Anne's lace. I hope that this video was helpful to you. Yeah, I was just really hoping to share my knowledge on this subject since I do think it is a very reliable source of pregnancy prevention and it does not have any known side effects really, and it doesn't affect fertility long term like IUDs and some hormonal birth controls do. So this can be a great method of pregnancy prevention if you are wanting to get pregnant soon, but maybe just not right now. So, sometimes, I mean, you can't just take the birth control pill for a couple of months and then abruptly stop and then start ovulating again. Sometimes when we're getting off of hormonal birth control, it takes our bodies a long time to detox from those synthetic hormones. So this is a great method of birth control, especially for women who are wanting to get pregnant eventually, and for people who are concerned about the long-term effects of hormonal birth control, especially during fertility. It's not enough for IUDs and things like that to make women quote unquote infertile or to make it more difficult for them to have a baby again. And of course, I believe it is best to keep things as natural as possible.